after supporters of President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol. A shaken Congress returned to certify Joe Biden's election victory. He will be sworn in on January 20. 787,000 Americans put in for new unemployment assistance last week, a number that remains extremely high and points to a labor market that appears to be struggling under the weight of a resurgent health crisis. Bolstered by a surge in Tesla's share price, Tesla's chief and billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk surpassed Amazon's top boss Jeff Bezos to become the world's richest man. These and more on TFT News. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is TFT News. Stocks hit record highs on Thursday as investors bet Democratic control of the U.S. Congress would enable President-elect Joe Biden to borrow and spend heavily.
Stocks on Wall Street soared to record levels Thursday, investors seeming to block out the crisis in Washington amid growing calls for the removal of President Donald Trump after Wednesday's chaos when a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. Investors are looking to January 20th, betting that more badly needed economic aid will be delivered under a Biden administration and a Congress soon to be controlled by Democrats. Crossmark Global Investments chief market strategist Victoria Fernandez.
Well, I think really what the markets are doing is seeing what happened in Washington yesterday as a one-off event, and they're looking a little bit longer at the stimulus package that's going to be coming. For that, we're seeing the markets react, and it's a day-to-day reaction on the markets. But today, it's the idea that more stimulus is coming.
The yield on the benchmark 10-year Treasury moved higher, and that in turn fueled financial stocks. Other economically sensitive sectors, such as industrials and energy, also rallied, lifting the S&P 500 1.5% and the Dow 0.7%. Tech stocks performed even better, erasing Wednesday's losses and boosting the Nasdaq 2.5%. Among the biggest drivers on that index, Tesla. Shares jumped 8% after RBC Capital Markets upgraded the electric car maker's stock to sector perform from underperform. That pushed Tesla CEO Elon Musk past Amazon founder Jeff Bezos to become the world's richest person, according to Bloomberg. The company's stock market valuation also topped that of Facebook for the first time. Walgreens Boots Alliance shares were the Dow's top gainer, rising 5%. Higher sales at its retail drugstores and higher prescription volumes drove the company's adjusted quarterly profit past analysts' targets.
World leaders have expressed shock and dismay after supporters of U.S. President Donald Trump, encouraged by him, stormed the U.S. Capitol building as Congress met to certify the results of presidential election, which he lost to Joe Biden.
World leaders expressed shock and condemnation after hundreds of supporters of President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol building, protesting the election certification in a chilling assault on American democracy.
The rampage at the Capitol yesterday was a disgraceful act, and it must be vigorously condemned.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned Wednesday's attack.
I have no doubt that American democracy will prevail. It always has.
A sentiment echoed by French President Emmanuel Macron.
We believe in the strength of our democracies. We believe in the strength of American democracy.
Italy's far-right leader Matteo Salvini called it madness.
The United States.
While UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said it was completely wrong for Trump to cast doubt on the election results and called the violence a disgrace.
And I unreservedly condemn encouraging people to behave in the disgraceful way that they did in the Capitol.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the images from Washington made her angry and also sad, and said Trump casting doubt on the election results created an atmosphere that made the events of last night possible. Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney was more blunt in his assessment, calling the Capitol chaos a deliberate assault on democracy by a sitting president and his supporters.
Take that house! Take it now!
America's foes also chimed in. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani assailed Trump in a televised speech on Thursday, describing Western democracy as, quote, fragile and in a weak state.
We have seen what damage a populist figure has done to his country over the last 4 years. The country's reputation and dignity has been tarnished, and America's relations with the entire world have been strained.
While Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman on Facebook called the electoral system in the U.S. archaic. USA! USA! Despite the uproar at home and abroad, the U.S. Congress early on Thursday formally certified Democrat Joe Biden's election victory, and an aide to President Trump said the 45th president would accept a peaceful transfer of power.
And you have to be strong.
787,000 Americans put in for new unemployment assistance last week, a number that remains extremely high and points to a labor market that appears to be struggling under the weight of a resurgent health crisis.
Fresh signs that the U.S. economic recovery is in the midst of a pause. New filings for unemployment benefits remain extremely high, coming in at 787,000 for the week that included the New Year's holiday, according to numbers released Thursday by the Labor Department. Though that number unexpectedly dropped from the week before, it still coincides with a labor market that appears to be stalling as states revive efforts to slow a health crisis that is once again raging. Private companies shed jobs for the first time in 8 months during the month of December, according to a report earlier this week by payroll processor ADP. And experts expect applications for jobless assistance to go back up after Congress went down to the wire in late December and finally approved an extension of extra jobless benefits of $300 a week. It also extended extra help to those who don't normally qualify for traditional state unemployment benefits. All in all, some 19.2 million Americans received some type of jobless assistance heading into the Christmas holiday. Focus now turns to the crucial monthly jobs report due out on Friday. Economists predict December numbers will show the smallest job growth since the spring and likely add fuel to talk of more stimulus under the incoming Biden administration, backed by a Democratic-led House and Senate.
Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine is likely to offer protection for a couple of years, its CEO said on Thursday, even though more data is still needed to make a definitive assessment.
Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine may be effective for much longer than you think. Moderna CEO Stéphane Bancel addressed the issue Thursday at an event organized by a financial services group.
The nightmare scenario that was described in the media in the spring, if you recall, the vaccine will not work more than a month or two. This nightmare scenario, I think, is off the window. We believe there will be protection potentially a couple of years.
But he said more data is still needed to make a definitive assessment. He said the immediate focus is on the vaccine's effectiveness on seniors.
The question, I think, is going to be really around the elderly, because as it's true for every virus, the immune system of the elderly goes down in terms of ability over time.
The length of protection was a lingering question for scientists and regulators, given that Moderna is just one of the companies that worked at warp speed to turn out a coronavirus vaccine in just a few weeks. Normally, vaccines take years to develop. The European Commission approved Moderna's vaccine on Wednesday. Bancel said Moderna was about to prove that its vaccine would also be effective against variants of the coronavirus seen in Britain and South Africa. Moderna shares, which have jumped sixfold over the last 12 months, rose in early trading Thursday.
After supporters of President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol, a shaken Congress returned to certify Joe Biden's election victory. He will be sworn in on January 20.
Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 300...
Just hours after hundreds of supporters of President Donald Trump stormed the U.S. Capitol, a shaken Congress has now certified Democrat Joe Biden's election victory. And the White House has released a statement in which Trump pledges an orderly transition when Biden is sworn in, although the statement also repeats the false claim that Trump won. Floor debate in Congress resumed, stretching into the early hours on Thursday after police secured the building. Both the House and Senate overwhelmingly rejected 2 objections to the vote tally for Arizona and Pennsylvania. certified that Biden received 306 votes to Trump's 232. 4 people are now known to have died during the chaos, according to police, 1 from gunshot wounds and 3 from medical emergencies. 52 people were arrested at the time. The outcome of this vote tally was never in doubt, but those who stormed the Capitol did force their way through security barricades, shattered windows, and scaled walls to fight their way in. Some besieged the chamber holding the floor of the House of Representatives while lawmakers were still inside, forcing suspension of the debate. Security officers barricaded the door with furniture before helping lawmakers escape. Vice President Mike Pence, who'd already angered Trump by resisting his calls to intervene in the vote, called it a dark day in U.S. history when he reconvened the session.
To those who wreaked havoc in our Capitol today, you did not win. Violence never wins. Freedom wins. And this is still the people's house.
Several Republicans who'd previously supported Trump's claims of widespread voter fraud and were expected to mount objections to the vote tally changed their minds by the time they had returned the chamber and also urged their fellow lawmakers to certify Biden's victory. Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler was one of them after losing her re-election campaign in Georgia less than 24 hours earlier. That state has flipped the balance of power in Senate to the Democrats.
The violence, the lawlessness, and siege of the halls of Congress are abhorrent and stand as a direct attack on the very institution my objection was intended to protect.
Trump, who'd refused to concede to Biden, had urged his supporters on Wednesday morning to march in the Capitol and, quote, fight. His legal challenges to Biden's victory have been rejected by courts across the country.
As the threat of a second impeachment loomed, President Donald Trump acknowledged on Thursday that Joe Biden will be the next U.S. president, a day after his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in a stunning assault on American democracy as Congress was certifying Biden's victory.
To the citizens of our country, serving as your president has been the honor of my lifetime.
As the threat of a second impeachment looms, U.S. President Donald Trump publicly acknowledged on Thursday that a new administration will be sworn in on January 20th, the closest he's come to a formal concession.
We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored.
The president's address comes a day after hundreds of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol just as Congress was certifying President-elect Joe Biden's victory. In the Twitter video released Thursday, his first post since his account was suspended for 12 hours, Trump condemned Wednesday's attack and said his focus would now be ensuring a smooth transition of power.
The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy.
The statement was a stark reversal for the president, who has been falsely claiming a fraudulent and stolen election for months, despite no evidence. And in Thursday's video, Trump continued defending his efforts to challenge the election in court.
My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. In so doing, I was fighting to defend American democracy.
But several Democratic leaders and a handful of Republicans have now joined the call for Trump's removal in the wake of Wednesday's violence. The Wall Street Journal, seen as a leading voice of the Republican establishment, released an editorial on Thursday evening calling on Trump to resign.
Bolstered by a surge in Tesla's share price, Tesla's chief and billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk surpassed Amazon's top boss Jeff Bezos to become the world's richest man. Bloomberg News reported on Thursday.
Move over, Jeff Bezos. Elon Musk is now the world's richest man, according to one estimate. Musk reached the pinnacle on Thursday, according to Bloomberg News, thanks to a surge in Tesla shares, which hit another record high and has skyrocketed 8-fold last year. That's pushed Musk's net worth to just under $189 billion, besting Bezos by $1.5 billion, according to the report. Musk has staged a stellar turnaround after nearly getting forced out of the electric car maker 3 years ago. Erratic behavior and controversial tweets put the 49-year-old in hot water with investors and the SEC back in 2018, forcing him to step down as company chairman. But since then, he's cleaned up his act, guided Tesla out of what he called manufacturing hell, steered it to become the world's most valuable car company, turned a profit, and saw Tesla get a coveted spot in the benchmark S&P 500 index. With a 20% stake in the car maker, Musk has enjoyed a $42 billion unrealized paper gain on vested options during the stock's boom. And Tesla's not the only thing going for the perennial entrepreneur. He also has his hands in space travel with SpaceX, high-speed electric tunnel travel with the Boring Company, and futuristic computer and brain technology with a company called Neuralink. But for now, his fame and his wealth remain largely tied to the ever-growing success of Tesla, which has put his fortunes into the fast lane.
These are the most important events from around the world. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is TFT News.